Spring forth!
Midnight Phantasmagoria.
One with nature. Ready.
Oi there, you lot. Jax is here and welcome back to my channel. Clorinde is one of the most underrated main DPSs in Genshin Impact, and now she's making her return in the second version of 5.2. So, if you want to reveal her true potential or ace the Spiral Abyss, then feel free to check out this video. With that being said, let's dive straight into the guide, and we'll begin with Clorinde's mechanics. The first notable mechanic is her elemental skill. It is a series of 3 consecutive attacks that deal electro damage. They're not considered as normal attacks, and they're considered as elemental skill damage. We'll get into that a little bit later. Each of them increases Clorinde's bond of life by 1 stack, reaching the max amount of 3 stacks. These stacks can be used by pressing the elemental skill button again, which makes Clorinde dash, deal more electro damage, and receive additional healing while doing so. Usually, to achieve the most damage, you should do 3 attacks with elemental skill and then dashing. That way you can maximize Clorinde's damage during the rotation. However, do keep in mind that if you're running a weapon like Harangepaku Futsu, you'll probably need to deal 2 attacks instead of 3. That way you can maximize the most of the damage from passive ability of Haran, while still not losing that much time during the rotation. That is a very oversimplified version of the wall of text that Clorinde's skill description is. Moving on to Clorinde's burst. This is not her main source of damage, but it is a quite important chunk of damage that she deals. All you need to know essentially is that the more bond of life she has, the more damage she deals. On top of that, she also provides additional bond of life after her burst so that you can continue dealing more damage and receiving more healing. And this button should only be used at the very end of rotation when Clorinde enters the Night Vigil state. Then you can proceed to using your support characters and starting the rotation over again. And since we're talking about Clorinde's skills, let's talk a little bit about the tile and priority. Everything is also pretty straightforward here and nothing's out of ordinary. The most important skill, obviously, is the elemental skill. As I've explained before, the vast majority of Clorinde's damage comes exactly from this button, and this is exactly how Clorinde will be spraying the majority of the time in the battle. It is also useful since Clorinde heals herself after using the elemental skill dash, so that's an important fact to keep in mind. Then we have the elemental burst as a second priority. It is a nice addition to overall damage of Clorinde, and on top of that, the higher level is, the more bond of life you'll be able to get after the ultimate ability, which once again increases the damage of Clorinde. Lastly, we have normal attacks, although I would personally recommend keeping them at level 1 in order to find a better investment for resources, and you won't be using Clorinde's normal attacks anyways, so this will be pretty much a waste of material. Let's look at the weapon options we have, and there's quite plenty to go over. Absolution is Clorinde's signature weapon, therefore it's her best in slot, good bonus of crit damage, an amazing passive ability related to bond of life mechanic, which allows Clorinde to maximize her damage. Overall, this is a very suiting weapon for her, and I believe that this is the best synergy of a signature weapon and a character to ever exist in Genshin Impact. Harangepaku Futsu confidently takes second place, high base attack, positively contributes to Clorinde's overall damage, and it also allows her to possess a comfortable amount of crit rate, while also providing her with 12 additional elemental damage. Though it is important to make sure that Clorinde doesn't have too much crit rate, otherwise she'll start losing potential damage. Mistplater comes right behind. It is kind of like a combination of 2 previous weapons. It has a high base attack and elemental damage bonus from passive like Haran, and crit damage from Absolution. All the other 5-star crit sticks like Alhaitham's, Chiori's, Farina's signature weapons should only be used if none of the 3 weapons above are located on your account. They may have a passive ability that kinda works, but other characters could potentially get more out of these weapons than Clorinde. As for 4-star weapons, there are also a couple of options to choose from. The first is the Finale of the Deep, a solid option with high base attack that provides additional attack percent, which is crucial for Clorinde as she struggles to find some of that. It is also a great boost to your damage through passive ability by adding some bond of life. And the best thing about this weapon is that it's absolutely free to play and could be crafted by a blacksmith in Fontaine. Lion's Roar is another solid option in case if you were too lazy to get the Finale of the Deep, or you were lucky enough to get this weapon from Gacha. It is not necessarily bad, but I would still recommend using craftable weapon because Lion's Roar is kind of losing a lot. Black Sword is another good sword to pick. If you decide to be dedicated enough to get this weapon from Battle Pass, you can surely use it on your Clorinde. The only issue with this sword is that it's pretty weak at R1. And getting refinements for it is simply too expensive when you can invest your resources into something more of a value. Lastly, it's important to mention that Iron Sting and Tokubu Shigure are also decent options if you're running Clorinde in a team where her damage depends on reactions she triggers. Moving on to artifacts, and there's not much variety to choose from since Clorinde is pretty straightforward of a character and there are only 3 options here. Harmonic Whimsy is a set that is undoubtedly leading. 2-piece provide additional % attack bonus that is crucial for Clorinde, whereas 4-piece allows the wielder to deal 18% more damage for 6 seconds whenever the bond of life changes, so it could either increase or decrease. It is important to note that this effect can only have maximum 3 stacks, but having 48% additional damage is not that bad at all. Gladiator's Finale is a close second. Just like Whimsy, it provides 15% additional attack, and 4 pieces are allowed to deal 35% more damage if the user is a sword, claymore, or polearm wielder, which matches the criteria. The good thing about it is that just like Whimsy, the set is very consistent and you can farm it passively while beating up the world bosses. Last but not least, we have Thundering Fury. 2 pieces provide additional 15% electro damage, and 4 pieces increase increase the damage of Dendro-related reactions with Electro. The only downside is that you are bound to playing in a team with at least one Dendro character. In most cases, it's Nahida or Dendro MC. If all the requirements are met, you are able to deal more damage than you could have done with Gladiator's set. For the artifact stats, everything is pretty straightforward here as well. For Clorinde, we'll be looking at attack sands, electro damage goblet, and crit rate or crit damage circlet, depending on what you have more and what you need the most. It would also be good to mention that Clorinde receives 20% additional crit rate through one of her ascension traits and also receives more crit rate through her passive, which makes it significantly easier to balance her stats, as she starts at 44 base crit rate. For substats, we'll be prioritizing crit damage over crit rate, then we have elemental mastery and attack percent. Lastly, we'll be talking about the teams. They're all majorly the same and revolve around Dendro and Electro, with certain characters being switched out for others. The best teams for Clorinde would be Furina, Nahida, and Baiju. This team mostly depends on dealing aggro damage, quicken damage, while also supporting your Clorinde in the most efficient way possible. The only issue with this team is that it's incredibly expensive, so there are a few cheaper options. For example, we can switch out Nahida for Dendro MC. We'll still get the same Dendro application and loads of energy recharge, which is crucial for Clorinde. Furina can also be switched out for an Electro battery like Fischl or Yaimiko that will consistently provide even more energy recharge for Clorinde while being located in the pocket. Lastly, Baiju can be switched out for any supports out there, like Kazuo Sucres if you need some additional elemental mastery, or other supports like Zhongli, Yao Yao, Kurara, and so on. If you want to experiment, you can play with a combination of Quick Bloom and Aggravate team by pairing Clorinde up with Yelong Xinchu while also keeping Fischl and Nahida in the team. This is a bit of a weaker team and it's a little bit experimental, but it's still pretty viable. Lastly, it is possible to use Clorinde with an Electro character like Fischl or Yaimiko in a Chevreau's Overload team. But remember, you need to have another Pyro support like Thoma, Xiangling, or better. However, this team is much weaker than every other team I've mentioned above, so play this only if you dare to do so and if you're dedicated enough. And this is it for the video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the notification button. I currently have 2 more videos in production, so by subscribing you'll be sure not to miss them. That being said, thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you soon.